What is the shortest war in history? It lasted less than an hour. In 1896, the British Empire and the Sultanate of Zanzibar went to war. That sounds serious. It was not. When the ruler of Zanzibar died, a new sultan took power without British approval. Britain looked at that and basically said, absolutely not. So they sent an ultimatum. Step down by 9 in the morning, or face war. The Sultan stayed. So at exactly 9 o'clock, the British opened fire. Warships bombarded the palace. The palace caught fire. Zanzibar's forces tried to respond, but this was not exactly a fair fight. The Sultan's side had fewer weapons, weaker defenses, and almost no chance of winning. So the whole war collapsed almost immediately. Depending on how you count it, the Anglo-Zanzibar War lasted around 38 minutes. That is shorter than most movies. Shorter than a football match. Shorter than some people take to choose what to eat. And that is the weird thing about history. Sometimes a war sounds like years of fighting, giant battles, and endless chaos. And sometimes it is just one empire showing up with ships and ending the argument before breakfast. What if you woke up in June and winter had come back? That actually happened. In 1816, parts of Europe and North America entered what became known as the year without a summer. Snow fell in June. Frost returned in July. Rain would not stop. And crops that were supposed to feed entire towns simply failed. At first, nobody understood why. There were no weather satellites. No global climate models. Just farmers staring at frozen fields and wondering what had happened to the sun. The answer was thousands of kilometers away, in Indonesia. 1 year earlier, Mount Tambora had erupted there. The explosion threw enormous amounts of ash and sulfur-rich material high into the atmosphere. That haze spread around the planet and reflected some of the sun's energy back into space. So temperatures dropped. Harvests collapsed. Food prices climbed. Families went hungry. And people began leaving places where farming no longer worked. But here is the strange part. The volcano did not erase summer everywhere. It only had to disrupt the weather enough to make ordinary life fall apart. One mountain erupted on an island most Europeans had never even heard of. And months later, people on the other side of the world were watching snowfall in June. History sometimes changes through kings, armies, and empires. And sometimes through a volcano that accidentally canceled summer. The deadliest wave in Boston history was not water. It was molasses. That sounds ridiculous. Unfortunately, it was real. In 1919, a giant storage tank in Boston's North End collapsed and sent more than 2 million gallons of molasses through the streets. For months, people had seen the tank leaking. The warnings were there. The company ignored them. Then one warm day, the giant tank finally gave up. And when it burst, it did not spill. It moved like a wave. A sticky brown wall rolled through the neighborhood, crushing buildings, knocking people down, and trapping anyone who could not get out fast enough. By the end of it, 21 people were dead and around 150 were injured. That is the part RP finds funny in the worst possible way. The danger did not look dangerous. It was not fire. It was not an earthquake. It was a tank full of something people normally pour on food. History is full of warning signs that look too small to matter. A leak, a crack, a complaint. Something boring enough to ignore, until it is not boring anymore. And that is the real lesson here. Sometimes history does not arrive with a loud explosion. Sometimes it arrives one sticky drop at a time. What if the Library of Alexandria never burned? What if humanity's greatest library survived? First, we probably do not get flying cars in ancient Rome. That is the fantasy version. The real version is more interesting. The Library of Alexandria was not just a room full of books. It was a giant knowledge machine. Scholars copied scrolls, compared ideas, studied stars, medicine, maps, math, history, and everything people thought was worth saving. Then over time, that knowledge was damaged, scattered, and lost. So let's flip it. The library survives. More scrolls get copied. More discoveries get preserved. More ancient ideas travel farther instead of disappearing into dust. Maybe better maps survive. Maybe old medical knowledge spreads faster. Maybe science keeps a longer memory. But here is the catch. A library alone does not create the future. You still need stable governments. You still need money. You still need schools. You still need people willing to listen. So no, Alexandria surviving probably does not make humans colonize Mars by the year 1000. But it might change something quieter. Humanity loses less. And sometimes that matters more than inventing something new. Because history is not just about what people discover. It is about what they manage to remember. So if the Library of Alexandria never burned, the world may not become futuristic overnight. But we might have started asking better questions much earlier. This groom hired his secret girlfriend to photograph his own wedding. Very romantic. For absolutely nobody involved. At first, the bride thought the photographer was simply professional. Then the woman called the groom by his childhood nickname. A nickname the bride had never heard before. She also knew which side of his face he preferred in photos. His favorite drink. And the password to his phone. The groom laughed nervously and said they had worked together before. RP has worked with many people. He does not know their phone passwords. The bride said nothing. She smiled for every photograph, finished the ceremony, and quietly asked the photographer to send her all the unedited pictures. That evening, she found one image the photographer had forgotten to delete. It showed the groom kissing her behind the wedding venue. The bride still did not confront him. Instead, she asked the DJ for one small favor. During the reception, the groom stood beside the screen, expecting a romantic slideshow. The first photographs appeared. Their first date. Their engagement. Their wedding ceremony. Then the secret picture filled the entire screen. The room went silent. The photographer dropped her camera. The groom tried to explain. Unfortunately, the next slides were screenshots of their messages. The bride removed her ring, placed it on the wedding cake, and walked out. He hired his girlfriend to capture the happiest day of his life. She accidentally photographed the end of it. RP calls that excellent camera work. This groom put his phone away before the wedding. Very smart. Unfortunately, his wrist was much less loyal. The ceremony had already started. The bride was holding his hand. The guests were smiling. And the groom looked extremely confident for a man making several terrible life choices at once. Then his smartwatch lit up. The bride glanced down. One message appeared on the screen. Last night was amazing. Wish I was the one in the dress today. The groom went pale so fast RP almost respected the speed. He tried to turn his wrist away. Too late. The bride read the message again. Then another notification appeared. Did she suspect anything? At that point, the watch was no longer a watch. It was a public confession bracelet. The officiant kept speaking. The groom kept sweating. And the bride kept smiling in a way that usually means someone is about to lose everything. When it was time for the vows, she took a slow breath and looked directly at him. I do, she said. Then she turned to the guests. But he does not. The room froze. She lifted his wrist, showed the watch to the front row, removed her ring, and placed it in his trembling hand. Then she handed the bouquet to the bridesmaid and walked straight out of the ceremony. He silenced his phone. But his smartwatch ended the marriage. RP calls that wearable technology. This office manager fired the cleaner in front of everyone. Very confident, very loud, and very unemployed by tomorrow. The cleaner had worked in the building for almost 20 years. He arrived early, fixed broken lights, cleaned every floor, and somehow knew every locked room. But the new manager only saw an old man holding a mop. You're too slow, the manager said. Pack your things and leave. The cleaner looked around the lobby, then quietly asked, Are you sure? The manager laughed. RP would have taken that question seriously. He did not. Get out before I call security. So the cleaner removed his gloves, placed the keys on the desk, and walked outside. Everyone thought he had just lost his job. The next morning, the manager arrived and found the front doors locked. Then a lawyer handed him a letter. The company's lease had expired. and the building owner had refused to renew it. The manager demanded to know who the owner was. Then the cleaner stepped out of a black car. Same old jacket. Same calm face. No mop. The cleaner had never needed that job. He owned the entire building. He only cleaned it because his wife used to work there, and he wanted to take care of the place. The manager fired the cleaner. The cleaner fired the whole company. RP calls that efficient management. This husband thought everyone in the house was asleep. His wife was upstairs. The baby was asleep in the nursery. And he was downstairs working late. At least, that's what he said. RP thought that sounded very responsible. For about 6 seconds. Because while folding tiny baby clothes, his wife glanced at the baby monitor. She expected soft snoring. Maybe a little baby cry. Instead, she heard her husband's voice. Soft. Gentle. The kind of voice he hadn't used on her in months. "I miss you too," he whispered. The wife froze. Then he laughed. Not his family laugh. The other one. "I can't wait to see you tomorrow." Upstairs, she slowly looked down at the monitor. Downstairs, he had completely forgotten that the nursery camera recorded audio. Then he said 4 words. "She suspects nothing." The baby monitor kept recording. RP would like to thank him for providing evidence in high definition. The next morning, the husband walked into the kitchen smiling. "Morning." His wife smiled back. "Morning." Then she placed the baby monitor on the table. Pressed play. The color disappeared from his face before the recording even finished. He opened his mouth. Closed it. Opened it again. Looking for excuses. His wife took a sip of coffee. For the first time in months, she let him listen to himself. Turns out, babies aren't the only ones who need monitoring. RP calls that parental controls.